Next on Currents News, federal prosecutors in New York charge billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein with sex trafficking after allegedly finding a trove of lewd photographs. The latest is coming up. The Affordable Care Act is in jeopardy once again as a federal appeals court hears arguments that could impact the health insurance of millions of Americans. Plus, Pope Francis is sounding the alarm about the growing arms race, calling the sale of weapons a sin.
Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio makes a special visit to summer camp, spending time with the Boy Scouts. He's sharing his life experiences and leading the boys in prayer. I'm Tim Harfman. I'll have the story coming up.
Good evening, I'm Emily Drewby. Influential New York billionaire Jeffrey Epstein has been charged with sexually abusing dozens of underage girls. Federal prosecutors out of New York unsealing the criminal indictment on Monday after allegedly finding lewd photographs at his Manhattan mansion. Damage to the door of Epstein's New York City apartment after federal agents stormed through. According to prosecutors, one of the places he operated his sex trafficking ring. Earlier that day, Epstein was arrested. The indictment alleges he ran a trafficking enterprise between 2002 and 2005, paying women as young as 14 for sex. He faces 45 years if convicted. Charges come a decade after the billionaire avoided similar charges in Miami through a deal with the feds. Epstein is well connected, having relationships with high-level people like former President Bill Clinton and President Donald Trump. Both have denied involvement. Epstein is charged with sex trafficking, which is a form of human trafficking. A major global issue, forced labor and human trafficking, is estimated to be a $150 billion industry. Here in New York City, it has become an epidemic. The National Human Trafficking Hotline counting 206 cases in 2018.
Brooklyn and Queens is an epicenter for human trafficking.
Sister Joan Dauber is the executive director of Lifeway Network. The Brooklyn and Queens-based group educates the public and provides safe housing for trafficking victims. In an interview done earlier this year, she said the Pope consistently fights against human trafficking, calling it a wound on humanity. She explains it's important for the church to work together to help stamp it out.
So that human beings can just have the dignity that is part of being a human being made in God's likeness.
The importance of combating human trafficking not lost on U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman. While announcing the charges against Epstein, he said it's important to hold him accountable for all of his past victims.
And while the charged conduct is from a number of years ago, they deserve their day in court.
Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta was the U.S. attorney that oversaw Epstein's original case when he got the controversial plea deal. As more information on the case becomes public, top Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, are calling for his resignation. President Donald Trump is still fighting to include a citizenship question on the 2020 census, despite the Supreme Court's ruling against it. Attorney General William Barr saying the administration will announce their next move in a few days. Barr did not specify what legal course of action the president will take. The Department of Homeland Security is asking the Pentagon for help by requesting an additional 1,000 Texas National Guard troops be sent to the border. The DHS made the request on Wednesday, but it's yet to be approved by the Pentagon. There are currently close to 2,000 National Guard troops stationed at the border. The constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act is being questioned again. An appeals court in New Orleans hearing a case that could strike down the law. Currents News' Tamara Lane has the details on the latest legal challenge.
The future of the Affordable Care Act, President Obama's signature health care legislation, is being challenged again in court. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans is hearing oral arguments on its constitutionality. The case, brought by Texas and 19 other Republican-led states, argues that the ACA is no longer constitutional now that Congress has removed the individual mandate which requires all Americans to obtain health insurance or face a tax penalty. Proponents of the ACA who are fighting to preserve the law in court, including California and 19 mostly Democratic states, maintain that Congress did not intend to repeal the whole law when they ended the mandate penalty in 2017. The Trump administration has endorsed this latest legal challenge, but Democrats like New York Senator Chuck Schumer say they will not give up.
We Democrats will keep fighting tooth and nail to protect Americans' health care for as long as it takes, and we will not stop till we succeed.
A repeal of the nearly decade-old law could leave up to 32 million people uninsured by 2026, according to a report by the Congressional Budget Office. The Fifth Circuit's decision will influence whether or not the Supreme Court considers the case. Tamara Lane, Currents News.
Two-time former presidential candidate Ross Perot has died. The billionaire tycoon ran two unsuccessful third-party campaigns in 1992 and again in 1996. He became a billionaire a decade before after selling his data processing business. Perot passed away after a 5-month battle with leukemia. He was 89 years old. Diplomatic immunity has been waived for Italian Archbishop Luigi Ventura, a Vatican diplomat who represented the Holy See in France, because of criminal proceedings against him on allegations of sexual assault. The Vatican calling the decision, quote, an extraordinary gesture, underscoring Ventura's desire to fully cooperate with the investigation. The Archbishop has denied all claims. Pope Francis is once again voicing his concern over the escalating arms race, calling the selling of weapons a sin. Melissa Butts has more on the Vatican's call for peace as a way to help curb this growing industry.
Amnesty International calculates that around 650 million weapons are circulating around the world. The U.S. alone has nearly half of that total number. Every day, millions of people are living amidst the threat of a global increase in the arms industry. Pope Francis has denounced this reality.
Ma anche tante volte penso all'ira di Dio che si scatenerà con quelli responsabili dei paesi che parlano di pace e vendono le armi per fare queste guerre. Questa ipocrisia è un peccato.
Monsignor Silvano Tomasi is a member of the dicastery for the promotion of integral human development. Throughout his career, he's closely followed the arms race.
L'anno scorso, per esempio,
last year, for example, about $95 billion was spent on weapons. Conventional arms and nuclear weapons are a source of enormous profits for some. At the same time, they are an investment that takes away resources from the general well-being of the human family.
It's a growing industry, and trade is led by the United States, Russia, China, France, and Germany. These are the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council that control 75% of the global arms trade. Among the largest buyers are the United Arab Emirates, India, China, Australia, and South Korea.
I rapporti internazionali, invece di essere
International relations, instead of being based on balance of power and on technology for destruction, must be based on mutual trust, exchange of information, working toward permanent dialogue that can build a future without violence, but in a strong, secure way.
He ensures the solution is dialogue between all involved parties. If one identifies the root of the problem and is transparent, peace efforts will succeed. Besides threatening family well-being and destroying peace, the most basic fundamental right, the right to life, is being annihilated each time a trigger is pulled. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Back stateside, the NYPD says crime is down in the city. The first part of 2019 showing a new record-breaking low for all crimes except shootings. According to their year-to-date index, there has been a nearly 5.5% decrease in overall crime, but shooting incidents for June are up by 27.1%. Year-to-date shootings are up 7.1%. And Governor Andrew Cuomo signs a new bill that will help Congress access President Trump's New York tax returns. The legislation allows New York officials to release the returns of public figures when requested by congressional tax-related committees. One of Trump's personal lawyers is calling the bill presidential harassment. Let's head upstate now, where Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is spending some quality time with an organization near and dear to his heart. Currents News' Tim Harfman is in the Catskills with the details. Hey, Tim.
Hi, Emily. That's right. Bishop DiMarzio is paying his annual visit here at 10 Mile River Scout Camps, and he's no stranger to the outdoors. Growing up a Boy Scout himself, the bishop is sharing his experiences with the children and leading them in prayer. The Boy Scouts motto is be prepared, and they were prepared with sloppy joes and tater tots. It's part of a special visit by Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio.
Good to see you. Hey, welcome back for another year. Hey, the camera's on. Look at us. That's right.
The bishop traveling nearly 120 miles from Brooklyn to the Catskills Mountains, showing support for children at 10 Mile River Scout Camps.
It's very important to the men who are involved in it, and it's always good for the diocese to show their support, so I do enjoy coming up for the day.
The bishop celebrating an outdoor mass where he relates to the young scouts in his homily.
We don't have a lot of leaders, we have a lot of followers. We have a lot of followers on Facebook, on all the Twitter, all that stuff.
Bishop DiMarzio is no stranger to Mother Nature. He was a scout himself and earned the rank of life, the second highest honor. He was also a scout leader before he entered the seminary. During Mass, the bishop urges the campers to consider following God's call.
Either they're going to be married or they may be priest or religious or something, but that's important to make that choice early on. Usually, you know, God calls us not when we're old, but when we're young.
These scouts are considering their vocation all while having fun. Joseph Maluo is part of Troop 139 from Our Lady of Grace Church in Howard Beach, Queens. He's an Eagle Scout, the highest rank in scouting.
It's a time for all us to escape from the world and technology. Just for us to just relax and earn different merit badges and learn new things.
So you're going to start it at 0 down here?
Those new skills include learning how to navigate on a map and CPR. Over 1,600 children will spend part of their summer here. Nearly 750 of them are from the Brooklyn Diocese. Bishop DiMarzio wishing the Scouts a good summer and reminding them to be prepared.
It's an important time for them. We want to encourage them.
And there will be Boy Scouts spending their summer here at 10 Mile River Scout Camps until August 24th. In the Catskill Mountains, Tim Harfman, Currents News. Emily, back to you.
Tim, it looks like so much fun up there. What else does the camp have planned for the Scouts this summer?
Well, there's a variety of activities, and actually there are multiple campgrounds spanning 12,000 acres. Children will have the opportunity to participate in horseback riding, archery, canoeing, basketball, the whole 9 yards. They'll definitely enjoy their summer here. Unfortunately, I can't stick around and enjoy the activities, so I'll just head back to Brooklyn. I'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon too, Tim. Thank you so much. There's a lot more news headed your way. There's been a reprieve for Catholics in California as a controversial law that requires priests to break the confessional seal is pulled. And for the first time in church history, Pope Francis named 7 women as full members of the Congregation for Religious. Plus, thousands of pro-life advocates marching in Dublin demand that Ireland restore protections for unborn children. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Pope Francis has named 7 women, including 6 sisters and a consecrated laywoman, as full members of a previously all-male council. The Congregation for Institutes of Consecrated Life and Societies of Apostolic Life was previously manned exclusively by cardinals, bishops, and some priests. The pontiff is also inducting 10 men into the group, including 5 bishops, 4 cardinals, and a brother.
As human rights claims have proliferated, some claims have come into tension with one another, provoking questions and clashes about which rights are entitled to gain respect. Nation-states and international institutions remain confused about their respective responsibilities concerning human rights.
That is U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo explaining the decision behind his newly announced Commission on Unalienable Rights, which will review the role of human rights in U.S. foreign policy. Critics are afraid this could be the Trump administration's way of pulling back on protections for minority groups. The national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, joins us now. Hello, Christopher. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Emily. Good to be with you.
Christopher, what will this commission actually do?
Well, the Secretary of State said that he's going to commission this group to look at fundamental questions about what it means to be human. What are human rights? What does the Declaration itself sort of enshrine as these rights that are sort of, unalienable, as the Commission says, and then take these fundamental questions and, apply them to policy situations. Now, it remains very unclear. It's a group of 10 commissioners, and they have a heavy lift.
News of this commission comes at a time when the faith in the public square is increasingly under scrutiny. Just last night, a California bill that would have required priests to violate the seal of the confessional died in committee. Christopher, why was this bill killed? And what can you tell us about the efforts of the faith community to oppose it?
So this bill was killed because the assemblyman that was pushing this forward realized he just didn't have the votes to go forward. It was quite controversial because the faith community has been saying it's a fundamental violation of religious freedom to force a priest to reveal what has been told to him in the confessional. And in fact, today they were scheduled to have a rally of several hundred Catholics that were going to go to the state legislature and protest this. They don't have to go now because this bill has sort of died.
That's so interesting. So now finally, in other news, the Vatican's upcoming meeting of bishops from the Amazon region is stirring some controversy among U.S. bishops. At the heart of it is the proposal that in some cases married men could be ordained to the priesthood. What can you tell us about the proposal?
So the proposal is that in certain remote areas of the Amazon where these people are effectively denied the sacraments because they don't have a priest attend to them or maybe only see a priest a handful of times a year, that older men in these communities who are already married could be ordained to the priesthood so that these remote corners of the globe aren't denied the sacraments.
So why are some of the U.S. bishops already taking sides on this?
Some bishops see this as sort of a relaxation of celibacy and the fear that we're going to lose the celibate priesthood. Pope Francis has said this is a very particular proposal in a particular region, not a universal claim.
National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Emily.
For the first time since Ireland passed its abortion referendum enabling the killing of the unborn in the country, pro-lifers took to the streets of Dublin for a rally for life on Saturday. An estimated 10,000 people of all ages marched. The event was organized by over 30 local pro-life groups. People from the Brooklyn Diocese will be praying for life as representatives from all nations will be meeting at the United Nations. Besides 24 hours of adoration, daily rosaries will be held at St. Mark's Church in Brooklyn at 3 a.m., 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m., as well as midnight mass every day until July 18th, when the vigil will end with a benediction and a closing mass at 5. This will all once again be at St. Mark's Church in Brooklyn. That's at 2609 East 19th Street in Sheepshead Bay. For more information, you can call 718-891-3100. Now to a story we first reported back in June. Helen Keller was a remarkable woman, an author, political activist, and lecturer. She was the first deafblind person to earn a Bachelor's of Arts degree. But what most people don't know about Helen is that she was a woman of faith and also had a New York connection. Under the railroad on Askin Avenue, onlookers watch a tribute built for Helen Keller. She's a national icon, but as historian Michael Perlman explains, she's also a local one.
She was very active in Forest Hills. Every year on her birthday, she opened up her home to many Forest Hills residents.
Keller lived in this Forest Hills home for over 20 years, starting in 1917. Family friend Robert Hoff says her neighbors loved her.
It was a very lovely tutelage, considering her worldwide travels and connections. She maintained a very indigenous connection with her community and her neighbors and friends.
Now her legacy is being remembered with a 48-foot mural. It features her former home, her dogs, her words, and more. It's the brainchild of Perlman, who secured thousands of dollars to honor her legacy.
Helen Keller serves as a beacon of light and hope and inspiration to so many people, countless generations.
The tribute was done in spray paint by international muralist Crisp and Praxis.
When Helen Keller lived in Forest Hills, her house was on the property where our synagogue, the Reformed Temple of Forest Hills, is today. So it was meaningful to us to celebrate Helen Keller, not just in Forest Hills and not just with the beautiful mural, but also to have the painting of the mural take place at the exact spot where she once lived.
Her former home caught on fire and was demolished shortly after she moved. The Reformed Temple of Forest Hills now sits on that land. A fitting spot for a house of worship because Keller was deeply devoted to her Christian faith. She even wrote a spiritual autobiography entitled Light in My Darkness.
Well, Helen Keller was a woman of deep conviction. And in our synagogue, although Judaism is different than her Christianity, we all believe in the power of God and connection to other people.
Now, just minutes away from her former home, Keller's faith, determination, and strength will forever be remembered. There's also a plaque that was incorporated into the mural that outlines Helen Keller's many accomplishments. Still to come on Currents News, the World Cup winning women of U.S. soccer are getting ready for a huge party in the Big Apple. We'll tell you all about it. And they may not be as famous, but they have just as much grit. We'll tell you about some Vatican women that are getting in on the action with their very own soccer team. As New York is preparing to hold a giant parade for the U.S. women's soccer team, one Cincinnati Catholic high school is also congratulating the team and a player who is also a former alumnus. Rose Laval's high school, Mount Notre Dame, has been cheering her on from home, even holding a school-wide viewing party for a game against Thailand June 11th. The school said on their Twitter account they couldn't be prouder. Finally, tonight, we remember a historic first from the women of the Vatican. They band together for the first time to hit the soccer field. Melissa Butts has their story.
At Vatican Family Day last June, women created a small group to play soccer against one another, like the men have done for years. The idea scored among the female Vatican workers. Now around 25 women aged 22 to 51 have formed a team, flashing these bright yellow and white jerseys on the field. We're dressed in this role, which seems like a novelty, but in reality, women also play soccer. Obviously, for the Vatican, though, maybe it's particular and new. It's fair to have a women's team, above all because the Pope keeps women in consideration and believes it's important. This year, we also have the Women's World Cup. After a couple years, who knows, maybe the Vatican could participate. Many of these women had never met, despite working in the smallest country in the world. The team's manager says the aim is not necessarily to win, but to have fun and build community.
We just want to send the message that we want to be together and represent the Holy Father and the Holy See as women that work in the Vatican, who are mothers, workers, and also, of course, play soccer.
They've played against local teams like Roma and are currently participating in a tournament with the Vatican's Bambino Gesù Hospital. However, they're excited for the future and where they're going next. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
That is Currents News. I'm Emily Drewby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.